My name is Shannon, and I am delighted to welcome you to the Four Corners Festival. We hope that there are people here tonight from all four corners of our city and beyond. Tonight we want you to hear new voices and encounter new people. The theme of this year's festival is home. As you may know, we have a spectacular Peacemakers loom on the go in City Centre. So before we begin, we will take a look at what is happening with that. I think it should appear on the screen here. There it is. So it is progressing nicely. If you're in City Centre this week, do pop in to see it. It is at 2 Royal Avenue, the old Tesco building in City Centre. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Cathy Short Theatre tonight for this event on the literary streets of home. I'm sure you will agree, Belfast fights way above its weight when it comes to literature. Tonight, 3 incredible poets and novelists will read extracts from their work and share with us how home has impacted their writing. As well as being the author of more than 10 novels, most recently Summers, Glenn Patterson is a regular writer for radio and screen. He is a professor at Queen's University, where he is the director of the Seamus Heaney Centre. Gub is the first book of poems by Scott McKendry. He is a PhD graduate from the Seamus Heaney Centre at Queen's and is now a lecturer in practice at the university as well. He was the winner of the Patrick Kavanagh Award in 2019. Last but by no means least, Marcella Prince is a poet who has recently completed a PhD at the Seamus Heaney Centre. She is one of the editors of Hold Open, an anthology published by the Ireland Chair of Poetry. Some quick housekeeping for this evening. In the event of fire evacuation, stewards will direct you to the nearest, safest exit. I'm doing my best. It really is my pleasure now to hand over to Glenn and Marcella.
Whoa! Jan, thank you so much. Thanks a million. Welcome, everybody. Thanks a lot for coming along. Have many of you been in the theatre before? Isn't it absolutely superb? Brilliant building, and absolutely delighted to be here this evening, and very, very pleased to be here with Scott and Marcella. You may have just heard the Seamus Heaney Centre mentioned a couple of times in the course of that introduction. We actually are on a rate. Every time the Seamus Heaney Centre gets mentioned, we get paid. So if we keep saying Seamus Heaney Centre through the evening, you'll understand why. I am really fortunate to be latterly to have been the director of the Seamus Heaney Centre, and it is a centre for creative writing, for poetry, and it is has become over a long number of years, but really in the last several years in particular, it is a home to an incredible number of new writers. So you were saying you were going to hear some new voices this evening, so that means I should shut up and let Scott and Marcella kick us off. So we're each going to read a little short bit, and then we are going to read a little longer bit. You can see this coming, haven't you? Yeah, were you listening to our rehearsals? And then we might read a longer bit. Yes, thank you. And then we'll bring it all back in again with one short bit each. And we're just going to see where the readings take us. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Marcella to lead us off this evening. So Marcella Prince.
will probably become extremely clear extremely quickly that I didn't grow up here. I grew up in the Midwest in America, so I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, which is like a 2-hour drive from Chicago. And I moved here from a tiny town near Fargo, like the film. I can do the accent and everything, but so the first poem I wanted to read, I wrote about trying to go back and forth. Because I've lived in Belfast now for 6 years, and places creep into a person, and so I guess this one's really about that, but it's also about this thing Midwesterners do in the summertime, where instead of going to a place with a proper lazy river, like to float down, you just make any slow-moving river a lazy river and bring your own gear. So this one's called Summer 2022 Minnesota. A friend organizes a float down the Pomme de Terre River. Adults in their swimsuits getting driftingly day drunk atop pizza and pony-shaped floaties, limbs akimbo. The styrofoam beer cooler has its own inner tube towed by a rope, looped around an ankle. It trails behind like a toddler who's struggling to keep up. This sumptuous day is one I can't explain in Belfast. Not properly, at least. To float up the Lagan in a bubble... I've never read it out loud. That's so funny. To float up the Lagan in a bubble, or to float up the Lagan is a bubble away from being a sad, clueless bastard. I never know what I'm saying anymore. I don't know which rivers are good for floating and which are not. Who will know what I mean by kitty corner or your man? Thanks.
Thanks very much, Marcella. I was at the dumpling library before we came. I didn't know we'd be sitting down, so I can feel sort of noodles moving around here.
Do you want to stand?
No, definitely not. They always make you stand. It's annoying. So this poem is about my home place, I suppose, just sort of across the way, Lower Shankill or the Hammer. And funny enough, actually, this poem was first published in that book that Marcella edited, Hold Open the Door. Was that your idea for the title?
We collaborated. There was a couple of us, sure.
Hold Open the Door. And it was actually dedicated to Glenn. So funny how things work out like that. So it's called Hopewell Place. Hopewell Place. We play in the bunker till the weekend, when the cold man came to spoil our fun. By then our sooty toys were hid. The cold man wasn't just a cold man. And the man who parked his polo in the square and erected a pyramid of andrax in the boot was Sturdy, the local black marketeer, who'd sell you anything under the sun, from a Thunderbird's Tracy Island or Nintendo to a bootleg Betamax of Tracy Takes Tokyo. And the woman who'd lean over the wall in the our yard on Friday nights, hoping for a favourable northerly wind, to listen in, to hear the latest on the coal man, as my rum-plied parents spoke out of turn, was Nosy Norma from next door. And the man who ran onto the field in a judogi had asked his way home. And the man who ran onto the field in a judogi to ask his way home had fled flat 10. And the woman who put cinders in her wheelie bin burnt the kennel and the dog alive. And on the lane at the end of our row, where me and Dinsmore threw stones at the soldiers, two boys hijacked an electricity board truck with the workman still in the boom lift bucket and drove at high speed till the man fell out and tumbled under the bonnet like a gonk troll doll.
Shout out to the person who laughed at Tracy Takes Tokyo, about which I am wholly ignorant. Scott gave me a framed copy of that poem, which is in my office in the
I thought you said it was going on in your living room at home.
No, it's above. You told me to put it in the office. It's next to a photograph of the Shangri-Las, which my which my girlfriend's, no, my girlfriend, my daughter's boyfriend, he's gave me at Christmas because I wrote a short novel about the Shangri-Las. But since they didn't live in Belfast, I'm not going to read that tonight. By the way, we have all got from Marcella, from Marcella's mum, these little paper clips or bookmarks, which are beautiful. They're like little nibs, and they're called
page nibs.
There you go, page nibs. So we're thrilled to be here with the page nibs. And if we can just get a little blackbird on those, you'll be soon buying them as Seamus Heaney Centre page nibs.
As long as my mum gets a cut, like.
I just going to read a piece, and I apologise. I read this fairly often because it's dedicated to my hero, one of my heroes, one of my great heroes, Anna Lowe. Who died in November, and it gave me the title for this collection, which is called "Here's Me Here," and it also gave me my email address, and it gave me everything about is here, and even the Seamus Heaney Centre, when we opened, we were themed. Our theme for the opening was here, and so anyway, this is a piece called "Here," and it's for Anna Lowe. So anyway, it's about home. Here. After decades of conflict and a few years carrying on like new lovers, coy about the names for the bits that give them pleasure. After negotiations lasting as negotiations are bound to last long, long into the night, politicians of all parties have agreed that the name of this place shall henceforward be here. Citizens shall be people here, the remainder of the island down there, and the island to the east of us over there. The United States becomes way over there. Please note, though, that people down there, over there, and especially way over there, may entertain some very strange notions about people here. Anna Lowe, Northern Ireland's first representative of Chinese origin, tells a story. She was at a reception in Washington. "I think you must have wandered into the wrong place," a man said. "No," she said, "I'm in the right place. But this is a reception for..." "I know what it's a reception for," Anna said. "I was hand-picked to come." "Hand-picked?" "Picked," she said, "by hand." "You?" "Me?" She said, "But what about you?" "Oh," he said, "my family left during the Great Hunger, 1840. No, I meant, where do you pay your taxes?" "Well, here, of course." He meant there, of course, way over there, where they were. She said to him, "Well, I pay mine back there." She meant here, because that's where Anna Lowe is from. Here. And that's where the rehearsal stopped. So it's all. It might be. We were going to do. Good God, I got to get out more, and not just with Marcella and with Scott and with other people from the. Thank you. We had been going to do some jazz sessions in there in the building every Monday in March and April, which we were going to call Blue Mondays. Not in the Tracy Takes Tokyo kind of way, but we were going to do. I hope I'm not misrepresenting that film. But so they didn't quite happen. But we were going to have some. We were going to have some readings. We may eventually do some Blue Mondays in there. But we were going to have some readings. And jazz always perplexes me, how they play off each other, the musicians.
Yeah.
But we're going to replicate that tonight with, as you're about to see, as Scott McKendry takes over and does what we're just going to term the next bit.
The next bit. I should have brought my jazz cigarettes. So I'll read this one here. This is another Shankill Estate poem, I suppose. So I'm not in the poem. I'm down the street. Well, I am. I mean, I was quite young. This is the early 90s. I don't know how much of an introduction you would give this poem. So people are watching the TV, and there's a knock on the door. That's the introduction, I suppose. This is a hard one to read when you've got a big belly full of noodles, dumplings. Fiesta. The earth spun on the universal fanfare, and the three of us were settled on the settee when the doorbell sung Big Ben's sick dong dang ding dong. I elbowed the both of them. You go or you go. I forget who did. It wasn't me. I mean hearing well chums were commandeering the car, get the keys, and seeing the fat one's skinny lips move through a botched job of a stitched up hole in a roll down the cat come balaclava. I mean CC shouting, Ernie, get the friggin' keys, they have a gun, as I bent down to pause, sea of love, and as quick as they came, they were gone. I mean hearing the next day on the news how they'd shot some man 20 times for something he'd done 20 years back, some bomb. The fat one stayed the main the three of us. We sat in a huff till he, seeing the TV, asked which film we'd been watching. The Sea of Love, I told him. He took a sip of tea and said, oh, put it back on. Is it a good one? I mean snapping, seemed dead on till yous cunts came, and on the earth spun. So that's... Well, they actually... The man who was shot was one of the Le Mans, the bombers of the Le Mans Hotel, and he actually lived. They shot him about 30 times. And we were back in the car, like going to Malale, like 3 days later. They just give you your car back. Which I'm sure you can all remember and wanted to forget, but...
Was that the poem that you weren't in, did you just say?
That's the one I wasn't in, but it was just down the street. So this, I'll read another poem sort of set there, seeing as this is about home. And this is a poem that I got quite sick of reading, I suppose. So, I don't know if you remember, I think it was 2019, there was a report about the Lower Shankill, these geese that were coming from Iceland or Canada, but they moved around a fair bit. And they were walking around the Shankill estate, and some child attacked one and killed it. So Conor McCauley, who was then environment correspondent for the BBC, the way he put it was they were given a particularly potent layer of protection from the Sea Company of the Ulster Defence Association. Funny enough, actually, I wrote this poem, and then this woman wrote a poem. I don't know if she read the poem, but people were saying, she's, plagiarised your poem because it's about this story. And then Glenn actually put it in his one of his novels as well.
They're the most written about geese. That's why they keep coming back. Nobody thinks anything of them when they're in Canada because there's loads and loads of them, but then they come over here and...
Yeah, I mean, I just love the idea that, I suppose that is a good thing, isn't it? It's a sort of ecological action from people that you wouldn't expect to do that. But then I found out that, so North Street, just in the, in the town, used to be called Goose Lane. So the geese were there before, and they went away and came back, and inevitably when we were all, dying of some kind of radiation from a nuclear bomb, maybe the geese will come back.
And eat us.
And eat us, yeah. And die. So, joke's on them. So, 5 million geese. You can go down for a juke I want to say a gander at the grey legs on the green. That's not so. That's a really cheap one, isn't it? That is a real cheap and nasty. Right, I'll start that again. Actually,
You just want to say it again.
well, I mean, it's not my favourite. I'll after this, I'll read another one with my favourite one that I actually quite like, proud of. You can go down for a duke. I want to say a gander at the grey legs on the green. That's not so much a field as a grassy space where the flats once stood. They come at the end of November, fleeing the Icelandic freeze, swapping the aurora borealis for murals in memory of Stevie McCaig and Bucky McCulloch. And those for Cromwell, Cuchulainn, Luther, and Iron Maiden's Eddie the Head, dressed up as the trooper, moonlighting for the UFF. Widespread throughout Eurasia, the grey legs of the steppes often winter on inner Mongolian paddy fields where they eat rice. But in this estate they make do with potato crumbs and the cones of dropped pokes. When a local finally stuffed one for Christmas dinner, a scroll went up on the courthouse wall. Let it be known, as with tourists, gooses to be left to their own devices. Yeah, the courthouse, I was looking at it earlier on a map. I was with students down at the Titanic Museum, and I was saying, oh, that's where I'm from. It's easy to find because you can see the shape of the Crumlin Road Jail and the courthouse beside it. But the locals actually, after the stuffed one for Christmas dinner, they burnt out that courthouse, and everyone's always saying, oh, you know, but it's like it's the only time that they ever actually, I mean, they burnt out the courthouse and then they rode up the side of the courthouse. We don't want a fancy hotel, we want social housing. Looks like they're going to get the hotel eventually, and hopefully they don't knock down the courthouse because it's a nice building. They did get some social housing. So I'll read another one. So when the person who wrote the poem that was very much like my poem, who I hope isn't here, because that would be embarrassing. I didn't actually accuse them of stealing. Not that I care. There's no money in poetry. It doesn't really matter. But I did feel like I had to get it out of my system a wee bit. So I wrote another 2 geese poems. And I wrote this one, which is also to do with home because it's also set on the Shankill estate. And it's called All I Want's My Goose Back. All I Want's My Goose Back. And another reference to Glenn there, I suppose. Right, so all I want's my goose back. That's the thing about us from here. We're always ratting for the undergod. That's the one I'm proud of. Ratting for the undergod. That's my favourite one. Well, it's the only one I'm willing to admit that I actually quite like. That's the thing about us from here. We're always ratting for the undergod. I know a fella, barman in Piccadilly, binned the framed photo of Churchill willy-nilly one Monday night. His manager wasn't in. And got away with it scot-free. It's only for a laugh, so who cares? But I want my fucking goose back. As an expendable character in the comedy of your life, I wonder why I annoy myself about your feelings. If I do call the hotline to the Royal Vocabulary Constabulary, I'll tell them to quash the charge and that, well, I'm truly flattered. Still, I want my goose back, or you owe me a tenner, dickhead. Something's rotten down on Denmark Street. A beastly camera crew slouches towards Boundary Way. In chess, they say, play the board, not the player. I want the goose you stole, I stole from Macaulay, but you can't give me that answer.
Oh, it's my turn. So because I didn't grow up here, I've had to find ways into the city by whatever means necessary. And I've married a guy from Banbridge, but he's all right. There's so many bakeries in Banbridge. Have you ever been? There's like 7 bakeries and like all in a row. Anyway, but he's big into running. He runs like 70 miles a week or something like that. So I find myself all over the island watching him run around, but most frequently at the Mary Peters track. And I have like a deep love for the Mary Peters track. There's like a like a hill where they have bleachers where you could sit really comfortably and be near the toilets and all, but people don't really sit there. They sit on these like grassy hills on the other side. And anyway, so I have like a deep love of sitting there and watching people in teeny weeny shorts run in circles. There's a couple of things I've forgotten from earlier. I forgot to say that kitty corner means like diagonal. I found out the hard way that's like an American Midwestern word where we'd be at like in a intersection and we'd need to go diagonal, and I go, well, we go kitty corner, and somebody would look at me and go, where are we going? So that was from the first poem. And the taxes are wild because America is one of like 4 countries where you pay your tax there no matter where you live. So like you brought up tax.
Yes, I did.
And I have to do my taxes, so it was really vivid for me. But anyway, this is a poem about the Mary Peters tract, sort of. And it has a really, I go to school for poetry title, which is Ars Poetica, which just means it's a poem about writing poetry, I think. Because I've never looked it up. There's like handbooks for that, but people just make that title for poems all the time. So this one's called Ars Poetica, Mary Peters tract, Belfast. Cameron says his friend has good economy of motion and such a beautiful stride, but I'm not the first to trace the lines between running and poetry. In the sun, athletes and spectators gleam, pass round the sunscreen, burn anyways. Ryan finishes the race, drops to his knees. At my desk, I imagine Ryan in the lead, then falling after the turn, his arms flailing as he stumbles into the final straightaway, apropos of nothing but a chance encounter with gravity, a funny way he put his foot down, a loose spike in his shoe. I see him laid out on the polyurethane, all that potential flat on its face. I'd see the end spelled out instantly in his body. I will say, the man he didn't fall down, and he is called Chris, and he's really good at running, so I always feel really guilty when I read this poem, because like, Chris didn't fall over, I just wanted him to, for the poem. Anyway. So that's the Mary Peters track. Sorry, the guilt took over. I had to be like, Chris didn't fall over, he's really good. This one, I live off the Ormeau Road, which I have done for about 4 or 5 years now, or Ormeau Road adjacent. And really the only introduction this needs is that when I first wrote the poem last April, a pint of Guinness in the Arago costs $5.45, and I've been updating the poem. So you'll find out how much it costs now. Yeah, and I wrote it because I was trying to finish my PhD, and I was having a really bad day, and I actually phoned my mum. She's coming up a lot tonight, actually, but I phoned my mum, and she was like, just go have a pint, you're okay. So yeah.
Can I phone your mum occasionally as well?
She'd love it, Glenn. So this one's called For Love and People Who Bring Their Dogs to the Pub. Spring sunshine even brings out the best in a chihuahua basking on the bench beside her owner outside the Arago Inn. She thinks nothing of the Frenchie or even the Irish Wolfhound. All the people wearing sunglasses, taking photos with friends, holding up pints. Sunburn and paying $6.45. And paying $6.45 for a Guinness is tomorrow's problem. In the middle of all this, there you are. A friend from work stops to chat. The breeze tussles your hair. Its rippling synchronized with the window box geraniums. It's an image I fear of interrupting, the shamrock atop a pint. Navigating into the beer garden, I could dissolve into blossom, petals scattered down the Ormeau Road, blowing into doorways. But you catch me just in time with a, can I get you something? A beer? Onion rings? And I'm rerouted as you ask me to sit. We're talking like Bob Dylan's rendition of Stormy Weather, wavy, weary, rasping into key with the prickling humidity. The nose of a dog nudges my bare knee, asking for food. A cool reminder of my body, of your body next to mine, of the tear on my face, of the drink warming in front of me. I will say in defense of the Ergo, they don't actually put the shamrock on top of the pint. It was just a good line. I don't know. I like associate that with like, oh, you're a tourist. Here, we'll do this on your pint. Maybe that's not true. Let's see. I'm supposed to hold one back for the end. Okay, I've got one more.
That was the other bit of the rehearsals.
A while ago, one of the ways I try and like find my way into this part of the world is by like visiting like old places, or like just trying to find like a garden or something and going there and trying to find a version of the world that I recognize, so that I can be like, oh, here's like home too. And one time I took the train to like Antrim town to see the castle, which I just want to say it's not a castle anymore. Like, we need to be more honest about that. Like, it's like a wall and like an outline on the ground, and then a lovely garden. So I'm not upset, but like a castle feels like a strong claim, guys. I mean,
It was not a defensive laugh and a massive tantrum.
I mean, maybe it's just the American in me, but I hear castle and I'm like, that's a full building. Anyway, I went to Antrim. I loved it. And this one's called Train Ticket to Antrim. I'm beginning to treat rivers like parting lovers treat the moon. When I look at this river here, I see the distant one I love too. I call my father from the gardens around the ruins of Antrim Castle. Tell him I'm not sure I can make a habit of this island. I say people know I am out of place before I say a word. He asks why, and I say it must be my clothes or my hair or how much eye contact I make. I say all my love for here is misplaced love for prairies, the rhythm of seasons, farms and friends who still live among them. The way people move in the world, like a puppy carries a stick he's just found, or a child who's learning if she waves at strangers, the strangers will smile and wave back. My father reminds me how last time I was home, I missed walking everywhere, complained about the lack of public transportation and how bad the coffee is, and the cold weather. That's it. Sorry, I have one anecdote, and then I'll throw it back to you. Something about the line about babies waving. I was in London for the first time a long time ago, and we were getting on the bus, me and my friend who had been living there, and there was a guy in front of me getting on the bus with like a baby, and I like waved at the baby, and she was like, "Don't do that; they'll think you're creepy." But something I like about Belfast, because I feel like you can still wave at babies you don't know, and people won't think you're creepy; they'll just think you're nice. Anyway, so that's it. Thank you.
Can I ask about the price of the pint? And not about the price, but about does $5.40? Is that what it was? $5.45?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Does that really annoy you with the poem? Do you have to do other things to make $6.45? Because you don't just show them at the bar and say, it's in the poem. Yeah.
Well, now it's just become like a running log of the increase in the cost of a pint. Right. And plus it's a good joke for things like this.
But if it gave you another syllable, if it went up to 14.37?
I think that should bother me, but right. I think that the price would bother me more than the poem. Yeah.
I just love the idea of marrying somebody from Banbridge and that they run 70 miles a week. I'm thinking, is anybody in from Banbridge tonight? Before we finish that sentence or thought. And you going all around the island trying to catch him was what I thought that was going to be. I grew up in Finnegy and not far from it was quite far from the Mary Peters track, but we just sort of got let out in the summer holidays. I think we got let out on the 1st of July and brought back in on the 30th of August. And in the meantime, we mostly walked kind of up just all the kids on our estate. We just walked up to the Mary Peters track. We never ran on it, but I think we sat in those.
They're so nice.
Yeah. I don't think there was anybody. I don't really remember anybody running around it, but I remember all of us kids sitting up there. So I'm gonna read a short bit from a novel, and several of the things that most preoccupy me, and that when I think about Belfast, I suppose the three things I think about. I think about shops, I think about bars, and hairdressers. And so here we are sitting. I was looking and thinking that guy looks very like Bill Gates over there, the guy with Bill Gates underneath him. But we are, there were 3 seats in there. I don't know if you saw them as you came to the top of the stairs, but when Marcella and Scott arrived, I was standing just over against the back wall. And they said, "Where are we?" And I said, "We're going to be in there." And there were 3 seats for the sinks to get your hair washed in the hair college. And Scott was saying that maybe Bill Harris was going to come in and later on this evening and do us all. Do you know Bill Harris at all? Have you come across Bill Harris?
He's
Harris
cut
hair?
my hair.
He's
sure.
cut your hair. To look less American?
No, he just cut it into a bob at the time.
That's the 5p as it became in 1970. And Bill Harris, by the way, he's now relocated to the Lower Hollywood Road.
Yeah.
And he's got the most brilliant sign or on the shutters when they come down. It is the cover of Love, the Love album by Love, the LA band from 1967. So if you just even if you don't go and get your hair cut for Bill's, wait for him, go and sit on the other side of the road and wait for him leaving and pull down the shutters and bask in the beauty of his sign.
Plus, it's really close to Bull House Brewery taproom, isn't it?
So bars keep coming back again. So I think I was thinking maybe I was going to read a bit about getting your hair cut, but I think I'm going to read a bit about from a bar. I wrote a novel called The International, which was set in the hotel, which is called The International, in 1966, and it was the International was at the back of the city hall, and it's I forget what's right there now. It was on a corner for a while. What is it now? 10 squares on the other corner.
Yeah, it's a bank.
It's on the. Is that what it is? On that corner, I know. So
yeah, it took me about 6 months to find that out when I was writing an essay about you. And
so that's
10 years ago.
So the back of the city hall, and for a while the city council took that on. So that was the city council's canteen. Did you work for the? And my brother worked in the city council in the early 1970s, and he used to tell us that we'd be watching the TV every night, watching Scene Around 6, and seeing Paisley and Paddy Devlin then kind of arguing, and my brother would say Paddy Devlin stands at the bar inside the International Hotel and has a pint with some of those unionist guys that he's arguing with, and so. That always fascinated me. And anyway, the city council took it over. But the bar in the International was called the Blue Bar. And I eventually wrote a novel about the International. So I'm just going to read a wee bit from that, if that's okay. But I don't know where it is because I wasn't thinking about it. So yeah, okay, there it is there. So I think this will take about 5 minutes. So yes, so the International Hotel had 2 bars. One was called the Blue Bar, one was called the Red Bar. And the Red Bar was the kind of plusher lounge bit. And I don't know how many staff they had, but it was far too many for me to write about. So I had I think it's a flu. Everybody's got the flu. So they're short-staffed in the hotel, which was good for me because I had fewer people to kind of keep track of. But it's really hard on the bar staff because they're all running around the hotel. Having to do extra bits. So my central character, his mate Jamesy, has been asked to go up to cover a wedding. So that's what's happening here. He comes back down and he tells my character, whose name I've completely forgotten. I can't even remember his name. What's he called? He's called Danny. He's called Danny. That's why they put those things on the back. He's called Danny. Of course he's called Danny. So he comes back down to the blue bar. Jamesy said he had never in all his days working in the international seen anything like it. He had feared the worst when he walked in the door of the Portaferry room and every head turned towards him, for all the world, he said, as though they were looking for help. Seeing he was just the barman, the heads turned away again. And that was when he heard the accordion. It was over on the far side of the room, the Donegal Square side. The drapes didn't quite meet in the middle, and the light from the elongated street lamp, so close you could nearly have leaned out the window and touched it, shone through. And for a moment, all that Jamesy could make out was this light and the accordion moving as though of its own volition. He had to squint to pin down the accordion player, starting with the fingers and working in. Did I say this was a wedding? I did. That's okay. This is the wedding. The head was wrinkled and entirely hairless. You couldn't go that bald, Jamesy said. You'd have had to have been that way from birth. It bobbed fitfully above the bellows like a balloon left over from a long ago party. The noise came to an abrupt end. The applause was on the discouraging side of polite. Thank you, your man says. That was the tune the old cow died of. Well, he might as well have. And now I'm going to play you some old bollocks of a jig, and I'd like to see you all up on your feet. And off he went again. Nobody moved but me, said Jamesy. I fucking legged it over to the bar before someone snapped and grabbed the hold of me to dance. The bar in the Portaferry room consisted of trestle tables, pushed together to form three sides of a rectangle and draped with white cloths. Flea Johnson, who normally worked in the cocktail bar, was stood behind here, arms folded across his chest, staring blankly. Jamesy waved a hand before Flea's eyes. He said he couldn't be sure still that the start Flea gave was put on. Wasn't there supposed to be a wedding here? Jamesy asked him as the accordion shrieked and wheezed. Did the bride not turn up or what? Flea nodded towards an unhappy-looking young woman in a plain pale turquoise dress, clashing calamitously with the wallpaper's magenta flowers. She wasn't bad herself, like Jamesy said. I mean, I'd have given her one. Coming from Jamesy, this did little to distinguish her from the broad mass of women between the ages of 16 and 60 in Belfast. The groom, a fucking glype, according to Jamesy, sat beside her, patting her hand, possibly in sympathy, possibly in time to the music. That there's the minister, Flea said. Who? Jamesy was still eyeing up the bride with the accordion. Oh, fuck off. I'm telling you. And sure enough, when Jamesy looked a second time, he saw that the neck beneath the shriveled head was ringed by a shiny dog collar. Apparently, he has an LP out, Flea said. The racket went from bad to worse to woeful. The groom's father and mother came out onto the yawning space before the minister and walked around it a couple of times. Two women, handbags hanging like breeze blocks from the crooks of their arms, got up and followed them. As they passed Jamesy, he heard one of them counting to the other under her breath. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's the way, the minister shouted, launching into yet another tune. He was enjoying himself. Let's see you all out there. The two couples sat down. The groom pulled lightly on the bride's hand. She drew it away, sharp. Everyone else was looking at the carpet between their undancing feet. Not a single person came near the bar. He has them terrified, Flea said. Jamesy stirred with the point of an index finger the paltry collection of coins in the glass ashtray Flea had been using for tips. Somebody's going to have to do something, he said. Flea Johnson swore that Jamesy really did do what he told me he did next. I thought, fuck this for a lark. So the next time your man comes to the end of a tune, I saunters over. Jamesy, you didn't. Fucking right, I did. Saunters over, has a wee word in his ear. It was Tuesday before I got a proper chance to talk to Flea. It's true, he said. I could hardly believe myself he was going to go through with it. You know Jamesy most of the time, all mouth. I was half expecting him to swerve out of the way at the last minute and start picking up glasses, but he didn't. He bent down and began whispering. The whole room was staring. They could see the minister frowning, and then Jamesy straightened up, and the minister shook his head and leaned forward towards the microphone and says, I've had a bit of an unusual request. I said it was for the happy couple, for luck, Jamesy told me. I said it was a sort of a tradition in the International. He said it was the first time he had heard of it. I told him he could suit himself, but that was the way it had always been. And by that stage, I think he was scared of not believing me, so he just made the announcement and handed me the microphone. Jamesy sang. He said he did. Flea said he did. I asked the Reverend, did he know Love Me Tender? I hummed a bit. I didn't let on it was Elvis for fear he'd take a buckle in his eye. Were you not scundered, I asked. Jamesy twisted his face. Ach, he was fucking amazing, Flea told me on Tuesday. I would never say it to his face, but he was. Love me tender, crying, your cheating heart. Nobody shouted at me to stop after the first one, Jamesy said, so I thought I might as well carry on. I forgot the words a couple of times, but I just went la, la, la until I got onto the ones I knew again. I don't know why people make such a big deal of these pop stars. It's a piece of piss, really. The minister, it seems, joined in gamely, even if he never was 100% convinced he ought to be letting this happen. A bit ropey on your cheating heart, Jamesy said, but give him his dues, he made a pretty good fist of it. Even called the guests up to dance again. Jamesy had by now adopted his normal stance behind the counter of the Blue Bar, right foot a little to the fore of the left, head drawn back and inclined to one side, observing the fawn flow of Guinness into an angled pint glass. I realised that behind the bar, or behind a microphone, it was all one to Jamesy. I realised that I hoped one day somebody would tell him he was, in fact, some sort of star. And did they dance? Dance? Did they? Fuck. Those people wouldn't have got out of their seats. It would have been Elvis himself standing up there in front of them. When he'd finished his third song, he replaced the microphone on its stand and he shook the minister's hand. They're all yours, Reverend, he said. And good luck to you. When did they start putting... What's that? Do you know, that was the kind of thing, when I was, that novel came out in 1999, and I seem to remember, you'd sit down to write, and then you'd go, oh, what price was the Guinness? And then you'd have to go down to the Lindenhall Library and get the old, or the Central Library, and get the old newspapers out, and then you'd spend all day kind of looking at the old newspapers, and remember that you'd gone in to look for the price of a pint of Guinness. Sixpence. It was always sixpence. It was sixpence.
2.5p.
So what's that? 60, indeed. Indeed. I loved at one stage, my kids were 4 and 8 and 4, which was 42.5p. Is that right? Which was, anyway. So, but now you just look that stuff up, and Tracy Takes Tokyo comes back comes back up again. I think we're each going to read a shorter bit again. So it's a bit like we were on the runway and then the plane went up and and it's coming back down. Having said that, can I just tell? I was in London. Do you remember when the storm Eowyn? Mm-hmm. Eowyn. Are there going to be lots, 5-6 years' time, when kids go to primary school, are there going to be lots of little Eowyn's in classes who we haven't met before? When Eowyn happened, I was due to go to London on the Friday morning, and it was cancelled. My flight was cancelled, and then another flight I rebooked, and it was cancelled. And then I finally got away. I was one of only 6 flights left, Belfast, on the day of Eowyn, and I was on one of those, and it was pretty bumpy, but we got to London. And then on Sunday coming back, it was really, really calm, and the flight left on time. And then as it was coming to land in Belfast City Airport, it couldn't come down because there was a sudden crosswind, so it had to go back up again. And they did that really scary thing where they say, so you might have noticed we weren't able to land. The captain is just reviewing the options, and he'll be back on in 10 or 15 minutes just to tell you what we're going to do. And then 45 minutes later, so God. we're still up, and 45 minutes later, the captain came on and said, well, we're okay now, so we're going to go back in again, and we're just coming round another way, and we're going to land this time. We'll be landing in 5 or 10 minutes, cabin crew, 5 or 10 minutes. So the cabin crew said, anybody who'd like to go to the toilet now, you can go. So everybody stood up and went towards it, and then the captain said, landing shortly, landing straight away. So then they started getting all the people who were waiting to go to the toilet back out and into their seats. I think anyway, so that was... and then we came down. So and on the next day, I was in the Seamus Heaney Centre. Thank you. And I was in the Seamus Heaney Centre the next day, and we were getting some painting work done. There were 2 painters sitting there, and we were talking about what we had done during Eowyn and how we got through it. And one of them said, I said I'd been in London and I'd been a bit bumpy going over. And one of them said, well, what about that flight on Sunday? I said, what time? About 5 o'clock. He said, about 5 o'clock coming in from London. He said, I live in Sydenham. And he said, I saw that plane coming in, and he said, I saw it coming down, and he said, I've never seen a plane shake so much and then go back up again. So that was the one that I was on, 45 minutes in the air. But here's the thing, I was reading David Park's new novel, which is, I don't know how to make this concise to put on the back of David Park's novel, if they ask for a little blurb about it, but I did think that if that was just the way it went, then I was going to go with David Park's beautiful novel called Ghost Wedding. And it's a fantastic, talk about home, fantastic novel about Belfast and about the ever-presence of the past in our lives. And I think that's, we're probably on overtime now. I shouldn't have started that story.
Perfect.
Oh, that's it. Planes come back into land.
Because my poem's about airports, so it's like we planned it. Yeah, exactly, jazz. We're just in tune. So as you can imagine, I end up in the Dublin airport semi-frequently, and it's become one of my favorite places, Terminal 2, where you go through they have this bit where technically part of Terminal 2 is American soil. Wild stuff, yeah. But so obviously my flight goes out of that bit, and it's my favorite people watching place, because now that I've lived here long enough, from a distance, I've gotten pretty good at being American, not American. So it's my favorite game, and this poem is a little bit about that game and a little bit about I just loving 2 places at once. And I promise I'm gonna do a bad American accent, but I promise not to do a bad accent from here, because I wouldn't dare. But this one's called In Dublin Airport Terminal 2. An American beside me discovers how shades of blue make all the difference when she picked out her Doritos. She wanted Cool Ranch, but the bag was a color between Bank of Ireland blue and this unseasonably warm June sky. She got Cool Original instead and was disappointed. Who could fault her? Beyond U.S. pre-clearance, everyone's ordered lemonade on vacation and been surprised. Either it arrives too carbonated and sweet or too cloudy and sour. It's amusing to hear every letter of Ballymena pronounced by a Midwesterner calling home, while an Irish teen fumbles the University of Notre Dame, forcing out the hard R and long A. And for a moment before this flight to Chicago, I am the Jack of both places.
Thanks very much, Marcella. I was just thinking there, Glenn, if you had died on that plane, you would have been called the Seamus Heaney Centre babe after the Busby babes. So this poem starts in America, and and then
Picking up from Marcella.
Yeah, jazz.
yeah, of course. It's we planned this all out. I suppose it's about the difference. It's about international stuff. I'm really struggling here to tie this together thematically. But this poem, I suppose, came from, if you ever go on Wikipedia, and if you're an aristocrat from anywhere in Europe, you can just keep clicking, you know. So if you have like a famous grandparent, which most aristocrats do, you can just keep clicking mother, father, and you'll end up usually somewhere in the middle of Germany in like the 6th century. And not that it's always accurate, because there's a lot of illegitimate children everywhere, but I was always jealous of that. Well, since Wikipedia was invented anyway. But it would be nice to be able to trace yourself back. But I suppose it doesn't really matter. You know, people get very proud of their surnames and stuff, and when you divide it up, it doesn't actually really matter where you're from. And it's very misleading. You know, there's always a bastard somewhere in the lineage that scuppers your theory. So it's called Male Line, a Fallacy. My grandfather was a hippie man. He dropped LSD at Woodstock. His father went to war at 17 after the Zimmerman telegram, and his daddy was an original Klansman from Pulaski, Tennessee, whose daddy-o, an orange man, marched from Bangor to Tanagadee. Funny that because his father's father was a United Irishman, whose grandpa, a butcher's boy, held the gate at Derryman, and that man's dad walked a lot of miles from Dunnamana to beg for that job, I don't mind telling you, from a Guildhall alderman, then dandered back to the farm his father'd manned for Abercorn. Well, the same man, his dad, a stowaway son of a Scots clansman, went Stornoway Isle of Man, then hopped off at Nendrum, where his great-grandfather, a Norseman, slew 50 monks for the gold that funded his retirement in Vinland, where he shared a wigwam with an Algonquian man near what's now Bangor, Maine.
The only connection here is orange, man. So, anyway. Listen, thanks a lot for coming out, for being here this evening, and thanks again to Marcella's mum for the yeah. There are Tic Tacs afterwards if anybody wants one, and there will be a little bookmark nib if anybody wants one.
Yeah.
For just about everybody.
Yeah, I've got 50, so first come, first serve.
Yes. So this is just another shortish piece. It's just about, it's called Hives. So just about here again, I guess. Under the old Stormont regime, Ulster had hives. They were the official rash of the Unionist Party, and like the Unionist Party, brooked no opposition. No one knew what caused hives exactly, beyond an excess of orange. With the imposition of direct rule in March 1972, hives were abolished and allergies introduced. Orange was abolished too, and juice gradually phased in. I was called to the city hospital for an allergy test shortly after Stormont was prorogued. I went behind a curtain and rolled up my sleeve. A doctor came in and laid a grid over my arm and pricked each space with a needle dipped in a different solution. Then he went behind the next curtain and the next and the next. By the time he returned to me, 2 red lumps had risen up on my arm. House dust and school dust, he said delightedly. They itched like mad, but I was as glad to see them as he was. I'd been imagining a bigger grid next time, even more solutions and needle pricks, 1.5 million of them maybe, until we came up with the reaction that was uniquely mine. It was a lot more democratic than hives, but a lot more labour intensive too. Eventually, the authorities stopped testing and started broadcasting, inventing Radio Ulster in 1975. Don't ask me why downtown radio was invented or what the fuck Cool FM is for. I have lost count of the things I found out I might be allergic to thanks to the Radio Ulster weekend schedule. The things I have given up as a result, although I am, admittedly, in the giving up phase of my life. The only thing I've taken up since I was 30 is flossing. I still drink, unlike a friend who finally discovered she had an allergy to alcohol. It made her do crazy things. For years, many people here believed that it was only thoughts of the other sort that made them break out. But a recent survey showed that religion is not the sole irritant. 25% of people in Northern Ireland are in fact allergic to people of a different race or sexual orientation living beside them. We didn't know it back in the days of concentrated orange, but really, hives were the very least of what ailed us. Thanks a million, and again, Scott McKendry and Marcella Prince. And I was just about to say thank you to absolutely everybody in the Four Corners Festival. It is a brilliant, brilliant festival. I was saying recently, Belfast isn't short of festivals, but there's nothing that has the reach of Four Corners to. So to everybody, whether you're wearing your Four Corners hoodies or not, if you're involved in this, and everybody here tonight, thank you all so much indeed. Thanks a million.
Do you want to try and... I think so.
Do your cheating heart, would you?
Thank you, Marcella. I can go behind you. Oh, that's easier. There we go. There we go. We got there. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Glenn, Scott, and Marcella. I am sure you all enjoyed that as much as I did. Maybe let's show our gratitude once more. Thank you. Just a couple of announcements from me. Thank you all for coming out this evening to be with us. As I'm sure you know, all of our festival events are free to attend, and that is thanks to a combination of both funding and donations from people like you. So thank you if you have been part of that. If you enjoyed this evening's event, which I'm sure you did, and if you are able to donate to the festival either on a monthly basis or a one-off donation, we would so appreciate your support. And information on how to do that will be on the QR codes that are scattered around on posters. And I think there are some envelopes floating around too. And if you do donate with the envelopes, you can also sign up to our mailing list that way, and you can gift aid your donation, which makes a really big difference. We would also appreciate if you could take a few minutes to fill out our online survey. That is really important to us. It allows us to plan for future festivals, and it also allows us to report back to our funders. And you can do that via the QR code on our website, and you will get a link in your email in the coming days as well. So we would appreciate that. Refreshments will now be served just through the double doors behind the stage, and we would love for you to remain with us for that, to continue the conversation over a cup of tea, a biscuit, a Tic Tac maybe. Tomorrow, Can We Bring Reconciliation Home is happening in St Mary's University College on the Falls Road at 7:30, and I believe some tickets remain for that, so maybe see you there. And on Friday night at 7:30, we welcome to Fitzroy Andrea Montgomery and Anthony Toner, who you would have heard actually as you arrived this evening, and tickets remain available for that too. Thank you once again for being with us tonight.
Thank you for the microphone. Anytime.